Empire. Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Conn Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can always read my work on ESPN.com. In a minute, I'll be joined by Washington Commanders linebacker Bobby Wagner. We're going to talk a lot about leadership and also what he has left as a player, what he thinks he has left as a player. And I would say, I think he's got something left because that's partly why they signed him. They signed him to help provide leadership for this defense and this team. And I think he could be one of their better leaders they've had in a while. That's his reputation, and it's well-deserved. So we get into a lot of those topics, but as a player, certainly maybe he's not what he was 5 years ago, but he still has something left that he contributes, that he can contribute here. And he, he's still a tackling machine, and he's a very smart player. And sometimes as you get older and you get smarter, you recognize things sooner, and that helps you play to a certain level. So stay tuned for that. And if you want to just go right to that, the interview is about 10 and a half minutes long. So if you want to just skip to that, you don't want to hear me go blah, 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 then just go right to that. And by the way, it's not a video interview, it's an audio interview. And I always have to preface this by saying, I understand that if you want to see the interview, I would love to do it that way. But sometimes this is the best way. And so this was all part of my gathering some quotes and information for a story that I wrote about leadership, with focusing on him a lot, but also Zach Ertz and Austin Eckler, but a lot on obviously on Bobby Wagner. And the best way to get those one-on-one interviews is to sit there with your, put your phone there, record it, rather than having a camera up in their face. It's not conducive to a good interview. And so this is the way I do it. It's just uncomfortable the other way for both sides. And I don't think you get the same information. Sometimes there may be more apropos, and if it's just going to be a few minutes, but for something longer, it's just, you can't sit there with the camera face. Anyways, I explain all that just to let you know why I just do the audio. It's not because I prefer it that way. It's because it's the best way for me to get the information I need and to have a good interview, most importantly. So, but speaking of the interviews, of leadership, and I talked about this before about Wagner a couple of weeks ago, about his impact there. And I, obviously mentioned Zach Ertz and Austin Eckler when I wrote the story for ESPN.com last week. They're different kind of leaders, and everybody you need multiple different styles of leadership throughout a team. You need guys who their leadership is shown by, hey, I'm a 10-year vet. I show up, I do the work, I take care of my body. I'm eating the right foods. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. That's why I've lasted that long. Guys like that are invaluable in the room. And guys who have played a long time, who can share information in the room, who aren't, and I think Zach Ertz brought this up when we talked about some of this leadership, that when he was younger, he wouldn't have embraced it the way he does now. Some of that could be you're on your own learning. Tight end is not necessarily a leadership position. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get your stuff done. You're trying to be a member of the team, et cetera. Whereas for Wagner, he's always had to be in that leadership role. He's a Mike linebacker. You have to take control of that defense like this right now. And they haven't had anybody like that here for a few years. I mean, obviously London Fletcher was a guy that did that very well. But the last several years, for sure, they haven't had that guy. And so that's what Wagner does. And so it's a different style of leadership. I mean, he's taking control of a huddle in Seattle where you got Cam Chancellor, Richard Sherman, guys who just strong personalities. He was a rookie taking control of that. So that's a different kind of guy. Eckler, same, more like Zach Ertz, where how has this guy lasted? How has this guy produced at a certain level over this period of time? Guys can learn from them too. Ryan Kerrigan was never a vocal leader. He was a lead by example guy. Okay, you want to see how you do it? Follow that guy. That's what he did. He was not a guy that was going around dispensing advice and wisdom. He would do it when asked, for sure. He was very sure he would share information like that, but he wasn't a guy that was, but his leadership was do it. This is how I do it. This is how I've lasted. Follow me. Right. but with Wagner, it's certainly a stronger form of leadership. And it comes from being able to, he's a productive player. So if you're not a productive player, then you're not going to be you can only be such a good leader. You have to be a different kind of dude. Otherwise, Lorenzo Alexander was a really good leader because, now on that team, there's obviously Leonard Fletcher, but Lorenzo was too, especially on special teams, but he was so well respected for how he handled himself and conducted his business over the years that players paid attention to what he said. So different ways, but Wagner is at the top of the food chain when it comes to this stuff. And so that's why I want to talk about it. I've been fascinated I like learning about leadership, reading books on leadership, as does he. And I think that's what I find fascinating is that he doesn't just assume it, he still studies it. And it's that growth mindset I think that he has that really, I think Jaden Daniels has. And I think speaking of Jaden Daniels as a leader, one of the things that this staff did by bringing in guys like this was it lessened the burden. Now, when they signed them, they weren't 100% positive they were going to take Jaden Daniels. And the only reason they weren't is because they wanted to finish the process. We clearly know that from the beginning, he was the guy, but you don't know, but you're going to have a rookie quarterback. So you want to lessen the pressure and the burden on that rookie quarterback by bringing in good veteran leaders. So that way the rookie doesn't have to come in right away and be that guy. You can come in and learn to do your job, learn to do this, and then start to become the leader that you were in college. And he was a leader in college. He may be a different kind of leader than a J.J. McCarthy or some other quarterbacks that came out, but he certainly was a leader. When you talk to people who played with him in the past or who coached him or who worked with him, they all say the same thing. He was a leader there. Guys want to follow him. You heard Ben Sinnott talk about that, just how he went and trained with him in the offseason. And he just says that he's a guy that people gravitate to. That's a leader. And he also does things the right way. And that's how you develop the role of being a leader. It doesn't have to be grabbing the face mask and talking to guys, but you earn the level of respect by how you conduct yourself, and the work you put into it, and then your production on the field. If you're doing X, Y, and Z and you're not producing, then maybe guys don't listen to you. Or if you're producing, but you're not doing the other stuff, guys aren't going to listen to you as much. And so, but with Daniels, he was a guy that was organizing those early morning meetings, and guys would show up, at LSU. And I had one person here tell me, like, I'm one of those receivers with those 5 a.m. meetings. I'm telling him F you. And he was joking kind of, but point is what impressed them is that he got guys to show up. And so I think ultimately he will be a leader here. It's just, again, everybody's got their own style and you have to be yourself. And I think Daniels kind of sucks people in with his personality. And then with how, like, you have to have a drive too. Like, you're organizing those early morning meetings for a reason. It's not just to show, hey, I'm a leader. It's to get better. So how can you get better? And that's another form of it. So you need a lot of guys like that. And I think that's what they've got with this group. You want to have a leader in every room. And it's just you draw up it's almost like a cabinet, right? And you want to have leaders here, and here in different areas, but you're going to have one guy at the top. And I think that's Wagner. So, and there've been good leaders in the past, like Will Compton, I always felt was a good leader. Will Blackman. Those guys were guys that could cross position lines and, even offense, defense, because they just had those kind of personalities or that kind of respect about them. So, again, Bobby Wagner. So but that's why I want to bring him on and talk about this. And I do think, like I said, I do think Daniels will get to the point where he's not, like, Daniels is a quieter guy. He's not bombastic or anything like that. But you don't have to be a leader. So I thought Alex Smith was a really good leader, of course, and he wasn't out there like his style was just, he could relate to guys. And I think Daniels can relate to people for a guy that's at a high level, but he's not like didn't have adversity in college. And so I think that helps shape leadership as well. So it allows you to relate to some more guys. And so anyway, that's on that. So couple other things. The veterans were off this week for OTAs. They'll be back next week. And we'll be out there on Wednesday to watch OTAs. No update on Brandon McManus. I don't know that it's going to drag on too long, but I don't know anything other than what has already been reported as far as what's going on with him. The team is looking at everything as they should. So just, that's what we know. So that's what I'm going to stick with. And the last thing I'm going to talk at some point about what are some realistic expectations for this team this season. I mean, all we know right now is that it looks like they're being built properly. We also know there's a lot of questions still surrounding this team. So what are realistic expectations? Now, I will say somebody I respect greatly, Mina Kimes, on I think she was with Kevin Clark on a podcast, and they both kind of thought, like, could Dan Quinn be one and done? And I don't know that it got, I don't know how much attention got, but like I said, I greatly respect Mina. I think she puts a ton of work into it. I've had her on the podcast before. I respect her knowledge. I do think in this case, I don't see any way this guy is one and done. It would have to be an outright disaster. And I don't think they have that kind of staff. And I don't think he's that kind of a coach. And I think if that happened, then I think you also would have drafted the wrong quarterback. And I don't think they did. So I don't see it. Despite what the narratives were over the winter, I do believe Dan Quinn was always high on their list. I'm not going to say he was always the top guy on the list, but he was always very high on the list. And I know the Ben Johnson thing lingered or lingers maybe for some. He didn't interview. So you can't say he was, there was a lot of interest in him, but he didn't interview. So that's what we know. And I know how much they like Dan Quinn, and I know how much he has changed the atmosphere in that building. I'm telling you, you hear from people who know John Allen well, he's like, the guy loves going in the building. People are going in there happy, which has not happened in a long time. So I don't think that this is going to be anything like that. Like I said, I respect the heck out of Mina, but I would strongly disagree with them on their assessment of the possibility of that happening. And it's also not the MO of this ownership group. I mean, this is not a group that makes rash decisions like that. And I think that would be, I will say, if the other guy were still here, yes, I could see that. They brought in Marty Schottenheimer, and the minute Steve Spurrier became available, they ditched him, a really, really good coach who would have had really good success here. That's not how Josh Harris operates. So I just don't think there's nothing about that adds up to what I would consider a possibility. So anyways, you may have heard that, you may not have, now you know. And again, I stress that I really respect Mina. I just disagree with her very strongly on that one. So anyway, again, I'll be back. I'll be coming, some of these future podcasts will be talking about some realistic expectations for the team and or how we see it right now going into the quiet part of the off season. So anyway, enough from me. I babbled long enough. Here's my conversation with Washington Commanders linebacker Bobby Wagner. Trades, free agents, quarterbacks, and all kinds of adventures await the Commanders this offseason. Looking for an adventure of your own? The Adventure Park at Sandy Spring has you covered. The country's largest ropes course and zipline park, located in Montgomery County, Maryland, is now open. Named Best Amusement Park and Climbing Destination in the DMV 2 years in a row, the Adventure Park at Sandy Spring is perfect for birthdays, corporate outings, groups, and families. With challenges anywhere from beginner to expert, there is something for all skill levels. Anytime you're thinking about reaching new heights, make sure you know before you go. The Adventure Park at Sandy Spring is the only ACCT accredited park in Maryland or Virginia. Staying on the ground, give axe throwing a try. You can throw at traditional targets or play any number of interactive games. You can even upload your own image. So there you have it, folks. Climbing, ziplining, axes, food, and bonfires right in your backyard. Reserve your adventure today at www.theadventurepark.com/kind. That's www.theadventurepark.com/kind. First of all, for you, what makes a good leader?
A good leader is a communicator, and he has a unique ability to relate to people. I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, a lot of people, they're vocal, they're not vocal, there's so many different forms, but if you peel away everything, I would say you're walking away with 9 times out of 10 person who knows how to communicate, has great relationships with the people that he's working with, which gives him him or her, the ability to, get the most out of the people that he's working with.
Obviously, like, you have to have some of those skills before you develop into one in the NFL. You're going to have something inside you already. I'm sure on other teams you're a leader, but in the NFL, like, was there somebody, and you brought this up in the little press over there, but somebody in particular where you just learned a lot more from them about how to be a leader in the NFL?
I think it was Coach Norton, for sure, because I watched him be able to relate to every group, whether it was the D-line, whether it was the secondary, whether it was the O-line, quarterbacks, like everybody, kind of gravitated towards him, and he had a strong relationship with everybody. So when things got tough, I watched him be the person that could motivate the guy out of that funk, or motivate him to, do more work. So I would say it definitely starts there, and then, it's just my own study too. I just kind of pick people that I admire from a leadership standpoint. I think Kendrick is somebody that I admire, Nipsey is somebody I admire, Barack Obama is somebody I admire, just to name a few, and obviously Jay-Z too. But, you start watching interviews and watching, those guys and see how they relate to people, because I feel like those are great leaders too.
Did you ever talk to any of them? You guys were at the White House.
I talked to Obama, but not like that. I wish I would. I mean, I'm here now, so hopefully, I know you gotta pop in soon, so hopefully I get to have a sit down with him.
So then when did you feel like because when you're a leader too, I've seen guys who come out here and try to say things, but maybe they're not putting in the work. Did you feel like as you grew as a leader that you had to do even more just to make sure, like, hey, if I'm going to say something, I've got to keep doing X, Y, and Z over here? I don't know if that's a silly question or not, but
I think every leader has a moment where you try to find your voice, and I think you have moments where you feel like you do too much, or you have moments where you feel like you live to somebody else's standards. And once you find your own standards and what you want to live by and what you want to really present, then you try to hone in on that and try to be the best version of yourself. And I think that's, to me, the process. There was probably moments where I did too much. There's probably moments where I didn't do enough, and then you find that happy medium and then you just be the best version of that. Do
you still read books on leadership? Do you do a lot of that or watch it?
Sure, I read all the time.
Yeah. Would you have a favorite one on that?
Favorite one?
Yeah.
I don't know a favorite one, but it's a book. I'm a butcher. It was like something 5. It's a blue book. I can send it to you, but it's like 5 leadership, 5 habits, 5 something of dysfunctional CEOs or something.
I think
something
I
like that.
Yeah.
And I like that book.
What do you learn from something like that?
The biggest thing I feel like I took away from that was there was a part in the book where you set the goal to be a CEO, and you get to become a CEO, and when you get the job, like, your skill set starts to decline because that was your only goal. Your goal was to just be a CEO, not to change the organization that you were a part of. So you get into the routine of what you think a CEO should be, so you get disconnected from everything. But in the book it was just talking about how what are things about the organizations that you wanted to make better. Like, that's the goal. Like, if I was to become a CEO, this is how I would do it, versus like having the title. So it was basically like, like, not getting caught up in the title, getting caught up in what you can change to make the overall company better. Which
brings me to here, because that's partly why you're here, to help make this place better. So what do you see? It's obviously multi-role here. You want your player, but they want you to be that leader. So what can you do here to help?
I think the biggest thing, to me personally, whenever I come into a new situation, is the first thing you got to do is observe. You got to ask questions. You got to see what's going on. You have to see what's happened, what's gone well, what's not gone well. And then as you figure that out, as you put the pages together, push the puzzles together, you start adding your little pieces in on how you can make it better, things that have worked over time, and see how to make it, even better, even better. A lot of it is culture.
And then, like Sam Cosmi was talking last week about how, you went up to him after a play, you started shouting out, "It's a pull! They're pulling!" Because you saw him leaning.
He told you that?
He talked about that. So, like, what Do you go up to guys afterwards and talk about that? Are those little things you can do now?
I think it's some things that you can do, but I think, for me, that's just football. I read body language for a living to an extent. So I saw his body language, he leaned, and I called it out. And he came up to me after the play, and he was just like, how did I know? I was like, well, I can tell you he was leaning. And he was just like, man, I was trying not to. So it was just, even like that, I've been around the game for a long time, so I see stuff. So you might think that you can get away with it, with an average, linebacker. But I've seen the body language enough, you know what I mean? So sharing that knowledge to help the offense see what some linebackers see and, try to help them from that standpoint too, because a lot of the game is cerebral.
Exactly. So do you pick other moments to do it? Or for example, when Alex Smith was here, he would talk about wanting to sit in some meetings with different players each day to get to know them. What little things do you do to get to know guys that can help those leadership skills?
I think a lot of it is just being here, first of all. OTA is voluntary. You don't have to be here.
Right.
So being here is the first thing, having those conversations outside of the building, having those conversations inside the building, talking about stuff other than sports and talking about other stuff other than football, because guys play football, but there's so many different reasons that people play football. And so the only way you can motivate somebody or connect with somebody is figure out why they playing. And once you figure out why they're playing, you know what to do when things are going right and you want to keep it going right, and things not going right and you want it to get back on track. Because everybody got to be reminded why they started this game, because it's a very violent game.
And that helps probably when you can pick your moments when to say something too. Here in Seattle, after, I think it was week 1 or 2, when to say something in front of the team or to a guy.
Yeah, you do it enough. And where you just get a feel. Because again, a lot of it is feel, a lot of it is body language, a lot of it is, knowing what somebody looks like normally and what they look like when it's off. And you can know when the team is looking like they normally do, and you can know when they look a little off. And, that is where confidence comes in to say, okay, I'm going to stand in front of everybody and say this is not right, and we need to get it right.
Just a couple more minutes. So is there a time you remember where it's the first time you did that, where it really struck a chord, wow, I handled that role, it was the right time to get the results? Did you remember the first time you did that where it really paid off, do you think?
In the league?
Yeah.
No, I don't remember exactly the game or anything like that. I just remember I might have been a rookie or a second-year guy, just come back to the huddle and just kind of saying, we're not playing what we're capable of playing. And that's, if you think of that group, who we had, that takes a lot of confidence to walk into that huddle and say those feelings. But, we had respect. You have respect from players, you have respect from your peers, to know that you're not just saying it just because I want everybody to hear my voice. I want us to be the best we can be.
And I don't want to just help on leadership because you're here because you can still play. So what kind of things have you learned over the years as you get older that help make you a better player? People are going to focus on age, but you can focus on wisdom.
I'm smart, man. I think that's the thing. I think when you learn from all the guys, it's the guys that keep their brain sharp is the ones that's able to stay. That's the biggest thing, because the game is changing, the game is evolving, and you got to stay on your mental side, whether it's on the field and off the field. So I always try to find a way to keep my mental sharp, keep my body in the best physical shape I could possibly be, and that's probably it.
And what things do you see in yourself that just say, I'm still playing at this level?
I think I had the most TFLs I've had.
Is that the wisdom?
Leading the league in tackles is not an easy thing to do.
No.
So there's certain things that you look at and you say, okay, you like, and then there's certain things that you want to improve, and you get yourself with the people like Coach Norton and a DQ that's going to be able to talk you through certain things and be better. And I'm excited to have a great all-around season.
And you've been with young quarterbacks before. What has stood out to you even after just a couple weeks? So what's your early impression of Jaden?
I think his composure is the biggest thing. Not getting too high, too low on certain plays, and I think it's just the want to learn. Coming in here early to work out, coming in here to early to go over plays and things of that nature and getting all the extra work in. I think that's someone who always, ends up on the right side of history.
Thanks, man. That's it for this episode. Thanks to Bobby for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back on Monday with another episode. I'll talk to you next time.